another series of CCJ Conversations. My name is Alex. I'll introduce our guest in a minute, but let's first begin by saying that we're in Melbourne on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respect to their elders past and present. We're in St Kilda at the St Kilda Crisis Centre, and my guest today is Jim Vaughn, the chaplain of the St Kilda Crisis Centre at Salvation Army, obviously.
Yes.
As you can probably tell by his accent, he's not originally from here.
No, I'm originally from the northwest of the United States.
Right. So let's begin as we always do with these conversations. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and more importantly, what religion, role religion played in your life as growing up, if any.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say I grew up in a Christian home in the northwest of America, and it was more of a cultural thing for me growing up than an actual belief system of my own. I can remember always being encouraged to repent of your sins and become a Christian as I was growing up, and I really appreciate the Christian teaching I received growing up, but it wasn't until I got into tertiary study and I had a moment with God when I was training to be an engineer and felt God challenged me to go into full-time Christian work. So I did that.
When you say Christian, you mean Catholic?
No, I'm not a Catholic. Two basic sides of the Christian faith, Catholic and Protestant. So I would be known as a Protestant, and more specifically a Pentecostal Protestant. So I'm not...
Is that what you were growing up?
That's what I was growing up. I am not actually a member of the Salvation Army Church. I'm an employee of the Salvation Army organization. So I certainly align a lot in my Christian thinking with the Salvation Army, and I have the commission to represent the Salvation Army.
So let's go back to that.
Faith.
So growing up, you said you had a crisis of faith at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be a crisis, more of an enlightenment of faith, sensing that even though I thought I would like to be an engineer, God's purpose for my life was to do service with people, and I assumed that would be being in charge of a church congregation, and life has certainly turned out differently to that now, being a chaplain.
So when did you come to Australia?
I came to Australia in 1984. I finished my formal training as a Christian minister in 1981, met this lovely lady, young lass from Australia, over in Seattle.
That's where the
connection comes together. And I must admit there was that question in my life personally, should I knew in my own faith that I would go overseas, but Australia didn't seem like that's just taking my wife home. That's not following God in a committed way to Christian service. And my wife says that she knows, she was aware 6 months after we were married that we would come to Australia. Well, I'm like many males, I'm a bit slower than she is, and it took me another 3 years. And I'll say this, Alex, because I know that when important decisions like that are made, for me personally, I want God involved in that decision process, knowing that with His assistance and His enabling, everything will work out. The contrary to that is, everything can go pear-shaped really, really quick. So I knew when I made the decision to come to Australia, this is what God had for me, and that was back in 1984.
Well, obviously you feel settled now.
Very settled.
Tell us a little bit about what the Salvation Army Church is.
Yes.
You said you're not necessarily directly part of that.
Yes.
And where you sit religiously now.
Yeah. Well, the Salvation Army Church, William Booth is the person, he and his wife Catherine started the Salvation Army. They were Wesleyan Methodist ministers in London, and they saw the social injustice of poverty in London. And I don't think William Booth ever intended the Salvation Army to become a church. Maybe he did, I'm not sure. But I wonder at times too if what the most predominant Wesleyan Methodists here in Australia is the Uniting Church. I wonder if they ever lament that something like what William Booth started went away from the Wesleyan Church and became a church in itself. I truly appreciate the doctrinal, religious foundation of the Salvation Army, very closely aligned with mine. And if I didn't feel that I could adequately represent that, I wouldn't have accepted this role. So I'm very proud to be a Salvation Army employee, and my basic commission is to represent the Salvation Army to the different sites and services within the Salvation Army where they send me to do pastoral support.
So you deal with people in crisis, or who do you deal with specifically?
Well, it differs from place to place. For instance, here at the Crisis Center, I tend to deal more with staff. And like we're sitting in the staff well-being room right here. One thing that I'm excited that they've asked me to do here is when staff members feel that having a mindfulness session, which I incorporate with relaxation, might be beneficial to them, then that's what I'll do. But I basically just like to check in with people when I come into a site or a service, see how they are, have a conversation. For me, the two most important things in my work as a Salvation Army chaplain is creating community and building social capital, so that we can all help each other and be together.
Your own religious practice is not of the Salvation Army, or it is?
No, I am an ordained minister with an organization called Australian Christian Churches. Historically, it was known as the Assemblies of God, and that's what I was in the U.S. I was from the Assemblies of God, but now here in Australia, they're known as Australian Christian Churches, and I have retained my ordination status with them.
Are you a minister of some?
I'm a minister of religion, minister of Christian religion. So I'm an authorized marriage celebrant by fact of that. That's another thing I can do as a chaplain. I can perform weddings, and I can also witness signatures and things like that. Yeah.
Do you do any work with interfaith communities in your role?
Other than being a participating member of the Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network, there is so much work to do within the Salvation Army. I would like to do more things, but I also know that I can't detract from the work I must complete within this role.
Of course. And can you give us an example of some work you do, not with staff, but with other people as part of the Salvation Army?
So I predominantly service this site, the Crisis Center, and our health center next door. We also have a lovely community center called The Well at St. Kilda Chapel in Chapel Street. But I also go to our larger center. It's known as the Temple, the Citadel, whatever you want to call it, 69 Burke Street, and its name is Project 614. I go there every Thursday, and they have a cafe there where they serve Monday to Friday 3 meals a day. And I do this simple thing of, during the meal time, trying to find someone I've never met before and have a meal with them, or find someone that I do know and catch up with them over a meal time.
And most of those people are homeless or in crisis?
I would say they're disadvantaged or marginalized in some way. Yeah, they're not necessarily homeless, but they're doing it tough.
Right. And what do you think you've learnt over doing this for a number of years, meeting with people who are disadvantaged, or in other way, what do you think you've learnt, and how do you think that's helped your ministry, your religion, or belief?
Well, I have a very foundational faith of a muggy a day. We're all created in the image of God, and because of that, we all have value and worth. Going into these spaces of marginalized, disadvantaged people and seeing how maybe, society doesn't value them, and maybe they don't value themselves. It's a privilege for me to find someone that has lost connection with humanity and to help them understand that they're important. One of the simple things they do at 614 is have corporate volunteers come in and wait on tables, take meal orders, and then deliver that to the table. And I thank those volunteers and say, yeah, that just helps the people that come here feel a bit more human. And I hope that me just sitting down and having an ordinary conversation, not one of those religious conversations where I'm trying to convert people to a faith system, but just sit down and talk about life. I've learned that people appreciate that. And at times people lose the art of conversation.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think religion in general should be about connection, should be about human interaction, and should be more about that than it is about pushing a particular religion or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, that's why I welcomed having this interview with you, because it's all about connection between you and me, the people that are listening, and as we work at communicating and creating connectedness, that's what building community is all about.
So we don't like to do these interviews for very long, so just to finish off, maybe you can tell us something that surprised you, or something that's a little bit unique and different, or something that you found that's a little bit out of the ordinary in some of the work that you've done. I'm sure you've met a whole range of people over the many years you've been doing this. Something that's that might be inspiring and different from your audience.
Well, as I've already mentioned, Alex, one thing that I'm very passionate about, and I've only started practicing in a very real way since I've come into this role, is mindfulness. And I've combined that with relaxation. I do 4 things in that session: check-in, body scan, reflection, and then feedback. And that's where the surprising part comes many times, is in the feedback. What did you get? In the feedback, I ask all the participants, in that time, what did you get? And one of the most amazing things happened some time ago, probably 2 years ago. A lady who's a Buddhist said her back was healed through that mindfulness session.
Wow.
And yeah, that's a wow. So I've always had this suspicion that you can be healed not because you're a Christian, but because you have faith. You have faith in a greater power. And she was healed. She's still a Buddhist. She has not converted to Christianity. And now I'm excited that I have field evidence. You don't have to be a Christian to be healed.
Wow. On that note, I think that's a wonderful way to end. Thank you for telling us about your story and the work you do, which is extremely important especially in our society at the moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the best with continued success in your work.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.